corporate social responsibility is a term very much in vogue these days. The truth is, it's not a new concept, and it has a history dating back hundreds of years. What legacy is modern business latching onto, and is it about selfishness or survival that the idea thrives and evolves? Wayne Visser is the founder and director of Ideas Factories, Kaleidoscope Futures and CSR International. Thank you, Wayne. It's such a pleasure to have you today. So talk to us about the CSR of the 1700s and today. Just how different is it?
Well, that's the interesting thing. We can go back to some of the early traditions which were mainly philanthropic. We can think back to the likes of Rockefeller in the 1700s, and the evolution through the 1800s, through the Industrial Revolution. We saw a welfare movement emerging, which was all about the employees. And today, really, I see that we're moving through a number of phases, right from a kind of defensive through philanthropic to a marketing-based approach to a strategic approach. And the really leading edge now, I would say, is transformational.
The truth is, it's also different from country to country, from continent to continent. Just draw some of the major differentiating parallels between Europe and Africa, and with particular reference to South Africa.
Yeah, we do see the differences, and it's really important for each country and each region to figure out what works for them and what the different drivers are. One of the things I noticed with developing countries is if you take a traditional definition of CSR that's used in the West, they talk about the economic, legal, ethical and philanthropic responsibilities. Actually, in developing countries, philanthropy plays a much bigger role after economic responsibility, whereas legal and ethical are much weaker drivers for CSR. So that's some of the differences.
All right, so now let's get into the chunky bits. It sounds like physics or chemistry, I suppose, to some people, but what are the differences between CSR 2.0 and 1.0?
Well, this obviously is a metaphor. We're looking at the comparison between the web 1.0 and 2.0 and CSR. And what were the major differences? Well, the internet in its early version hadn't gone to scale. 45 million users by 1996. All one-way communication, basically putting your brochure online. In the same way, a lot of companies have approached it in a similar way, where it's all been about just telling the world how good you are, and usually just the big branded companies. 2.0 went to scale, billion users by 2006, all about two-way communication, user-generated content, wikis, blogs. In the same way, CSR has to become genuinely co-created. It has to go to scale beyond those big branded companies, and it has to be something that we feel we can creatively do together.
It's definitely here to stay, and it's going to get bigger.
It is, because the problems are getting more serious and more urgent, and we know that we have to transition to a low carbon economy of 80 to 90% less carbon by 2050. That, frankly, is another industrial revolution. You know, companies need to decide which side of history they're going to be on.
Change is inevitable.
Yep.
Change is inevitable. What role do you think social entrepreneurs play in the sustainability space?
Well, one of the things we've noticed is that these problems are big and they're complex and they need creative solutions. And actually the managerial approach to this, the big business approach, has got us some way down the line, but hasn't really given us the scale and the urgency that we need. Whereas a lot of the social entrepreneurs that are emerging have managed to do that. And so it's one of the key elements of this 2.0 approach, is to use business which can operate quickly and can identify solutions often much quicker than business or even NGOs, but to direct that towards a social or environmental end.
And then what stage in the sustainability spectrum, according to some of the research that you've done insofar as the way business evolves, are social entrepreneurs operating?
Well, I think the best of them really are part of the transformative game. So I think that they are the kind of social responsibility we need. What we see actually also is companies, big companies, linking up with social entrepreneurs. So instead of just giving money to charity, why not give money to a social enterprise which will then be self-sustaining and grow and have a much bigger impact?
Because that's the big question, isn't it? What's in it for me, or what's in it for the community I represent? Which leads me to examples perhaps that you have in your arsenal for social enterprises that are sustainable and can stay the course.
Well, every social enterprise takes a risk, and if it works, if it really delivers, it survives and it thrives. I'll give you one example from India. There's a company called A Little World, started by Anurag Gupta. It's a microbanking company. It uses a mobile phone and a biometric scanner. And the bank, the branch in rural Indian villages, is one woman sitting at her kitchen table. The branch sits on the phone, 50,000 records. The customer, the rural village women, come to her. They don't need to be able to read or write. They don't need any proof of identity. Within 2 days, they've created a bank account for them. And they run that branch, that one-person branch, on $80 a day. So that's a model that's having a massive impact in India and is going to scale, and the kind of thing that we need to see more of.
Could work in South Africa, in the rural areas, do you think?
We hope so, yeah.
Wayne, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. He is the founder and director of the Ideas Factories, Kaleidoscope Futures and CSR International.